Hey, I'm ZSH Plays. Welcome to the ultimate Lost World. We're going to build a complete movie-accurate version of Isla Sorna, including everything you see in the Lost World and Jurassic Park 3. Let's go. We're going to start by creating Isla Sorna from scratch using the island generator, going through many different random islands until we get one that looks like Isla Sorna, and there it is. And then we'll be adding in more beaches, more water, and less mountains until we get something as close as possible to the island that we want, and then we can go in and start customizing it with the terrain tools. We're going to lay out the entire island, create the iconic beach from the opening scene of the film, and build the entire worker village from one of the main sequences in the film, along with the long grass that lies next to it. This here is going to be our beach, so we're going to get some slopes in here to make sure the animals can get down here, because the climax is going to be turning this island into an actual functioning ecosystem. There's a river network that runs throughout the whole island, so we're going to place this in and make sure it all makes sense and ends at the beach with the water flowing in the right direction, etc. Get a load of waterfalls in. We know the island is more mountainous around the edges than it is in the center, so we'll raise the edges all the way around it. And that is the basic landscaping for the island done. Let's take a look at what we're going to be building. We've got a lot of building to do. I'm basing the locations of each of these areas on the Jurassic Park legacy map of Isla Sorna, which is about as accurate as we can get, and we're starting with the beach. This is where the Lost World film begins and where the Jurassic Park novel begins, and it's probably the simplest thing that we're going to be building. We've already got some sun loungers and parasols and things like that. All we need to make is the little fold-out table with the bucket of wine on it that the English family have when they're on the beach. So we're going to make that with some of the pieces from the wetlands pack. This is one of the wetlands signs, just spun upside down so you can't see the writing, and then we've shrunk it down to make a little tabletop here. Without a bucket, no wine bottles in the game, so a bucket on its own will have to do. A little rope for a candle, and that's the kind of picnic done. We can move on to landscaping. So I noticed as the little girl walks from where her family are to where she encounters the compies, she goes past some sort of evergreen tree, and there's loads of seaweed lying around on the beach as well. So we'll place all that in, and then we'll make a little forested area where our compies are going to live, just using a mixture of some of the terrain brushes and then placing some individual ferns and things like that. This part of the beach opens out and gives a bit of a view into the interior of the island. You can see a big hill or mountain in the background. So frustrating that you can't just paint trees onto mountains in JWE3. So we'll put our own trees up here, just using some shrunken down kapok trees to get it all nicely covered. And that's the beach done. This is where the compies are going to live. We're going to have a few little nests in there for them. And then this is the whole thing. Really does look like the perfect spot for a picnic. Just make sure you keep an eye on any of your kids. Now we're going to lay out the last few spots on the island to make sure we get our geography right, and then we'll move on to building the worker village. So we've got the trailers in, or stand-ins for the trailers anyway. We'll put the rest of the river system in, including the shallower spot where they see the Stegosaurus. So we'll put a little Stegosaurus family statue in there as a placeholder. And then in one final bit of river, we'll add in a temporary aviary for the scenes in Jurassic Park 3. This, I think, will be one of my favourite parts of the island. With that all done, it's time to start building the worker village. In contrast to the beach, this might be the most complex thing that we build. There is a lot going on in here. We've got fences and broken fences forming a compound. Then inside it, there's towers, staff buildings, giant, really cool looking administration building, a gas station, and all sorts of broken vehicles and things like that. This took a long time to build, and you might notice we're not actually on the island that we just created here. This is the basic Isla Sorna map in the game, because I actually started building this before the new update came out. The island generator wasn't as powerful as it is now, and I knew we needed the new options for beaches, etc. to get that working properly. So I started building it on this map. We'll get about halfway through, and then we're going to transfer all of it across to our new map and get it finished. The first thing we're building is the broken fence that allows the raptors to get into this area. We're using the wire generator pieces here to create a top piece of wire that's kind of hanging down, no longer electrified, using the shortest wire piece and then curving it manually so we can make it look like it's sagging down. And then we're using some of the other pieces to create wires that have fallen down completely. I've created a custom concrete base just to match how it looks in the film a bit better than the ones in the game. We're going to put some vehicles down to get us a rough layout for the area, although we'll be getting the layout exact before it is finished. And we'll also do some work on the vehicles just to make them look a bit more beat up with some decals and a broken windscreen and things like that. and then we'll finish off the gate at the front of the area. There's a big InGen sign above the gate, so we're going to create that now. I really wanted to use this piece as the backdrop for it because the texture's really good, but I realized after placing it's not FlexiColor, so we'll cover this up with various other pieces to give us the effect that we're looking for in a second. We're going to put the InGen name on here. There should be some text underneath as well saying "we build your future" or words to that effect, but I can't get the text small enough to do that, so we'll just leave it as the words InGen. We're going to use the backs of some windows to create a border for the sign. They are the right size and texture for what we need, and we can get those to the right color as well. So we'll build up the edges of the sign and join it seamlessly onto the gate using those. And later on we'll put some decals on it, but this is what it's looking like at the moment. Pretty happy with that. And now we'll create the pipework that runs from outside the complex into it and is presumably how the geothermal power gets in here. We've pretty much got the exact pieces that we need to create these, so this is nice and simple. We just need to get everything in the right place, and then we'll cover it all in vines and plants and cracks and things to make them look like they're being reclaimed by the jungle. There's also the boneyard at the start of the pipework, which we'll build later. But we basically just need to build one of these. It's a repeating pattern, so we'll just make sure we get one absolutely perfect. And once we've got one that we're happy with, we'll start attaching them together. Looks like some kind of autoerotic sequence as we put it together. But we'll just run these inside the compound, and then we'll use some of the water towers to finish off this little kind of power area on the inside of the compound. Absolutely loving the scaling tool, so we can just use these one piece and have 3 of these of different sizes. Makes things so much easier. And then we'll cover them all in ivy and cracks and things like that. And because we've got the air conditioning units as part of the build, there's actually steam coming out of it as well, which is useful seeing as this is supposed to be geothermal power. We're almost done with this entrance area now. We just need to break this wall up, get some of these kind of destroyed concrete pieces in here so we can start getting rid of this bit of wall in a way that looks natural. We'll get these to the right color and use a few of these where it's broken up. And there we go. Starting to look good now. Let's move on to the buildings. So the first building that we're going to tackle is the wooden tower to the left of the gate as you come in. So just using a few doors here to get the scale correct, and then we'll start building it out of the wood pieces and some of the girder pieces. I mentioned the wetlands pack earlier. All those janky wood pieces in the pack would be absolutely perfect for creating these buildings. So we're just using one of the base game wall textures for this initially, and then later on it'll all get covered up. And then we'll turn our attention to the roof. So we're going to build this using some of the lovely, very clean looking corrugated roofs in the base game. And again, later we'll replace this with all the rusty, falling to pieces corrugated roofs from the wetlands pack. And we'll build the little tower that sits on top of the roof as well. Put a load of decals on it just to start getting that weathered kind of feel that we want. And we'll put some trim in, vital for making your buildings look realistic. We'll take a look at the finished, for now, tower. And then we're going to move on to the largest and most impressive building in the whole compound, the operations center. This is a really cool building. You don't get to see too much of it in the film because all the scenes that it features in take place at night, and they're action scenes, so cameras going all over the place, but it is really cool. Hard to find references of, but I managed to find a couple of production photos taken during the day where you can see it much clearer than you can in the film, so we should be able to get this pretty accurate. This is kind of the nerve center of Isla Sorna, and it went through quite a lot of changes during the making of the film as well. In all the concept art, it sits in front of a giant waterfall coming down a cliff, which feeds into a lake, which is where the building is set, which is why it has this big extended staircase at the front to get you over the lake and into the building. And then on the opposite side of it are more cliffs where the long grass lies. However, while they were actually filming, Steven Spielberg decided to bring the dinosaurs on the mainland idea, which he had for the third film, forward into the climax of the second film. And with the climax of the film now taking place in San Diego, they didn't want to spend as much money on the worker village set. So the giant waterfall and lake was replaced just by a kind of pool of water that the building sits in, and the cliffs at both sides were removed. There was originally going to be a scene where the characters escaped from the raptors by hang gliding off of the cliffs after the long grass, because they somehow had hang gliders, but that was removed as well. So that's the lore out of the way. Let's talk about the build. So we're using loads of the different concrete pieces here, along with some of the fence pieces as well, and just making the shape of the building. It's got a lot of different levels to it. Starts off on the ground, then it takes you up a bit over the water. There's a ground floor, which is kind of like a balcony running all the way around, and then another floor where the main entrance is. We'll run a load of these pieces along here to act as windows, and we'll take a look at how it's shaping up. Nice. It's floating in midair though, so let's get some supports in. So it's actually attached to the ground. We'll place these in on the top part because that's easier, and then we can just sink them down to meet with the ground there. And then we'll move on to the front door. So we've got one of the classic egg doors on the front here. You can see that in the film. And then we'll fill around this with some of these window pieces. Still really enjoying how we can choose what backdrop you can see through these. And we'll pick one of those in a second. We're going to put some slanting walls in front of it with some security lights on them. And then we will fill the rest of the windows in with the non-see-through glass pieces because we are not building interiors on this island. And there we go. That's as far as we're taking this on the default map. It's time to move this over to our beautiful new island. As you can see, I initially built the massive waterfall, but I decided, seeing as we're making everything match the films, probably shouldn't be there. So we'll get rid of that later. What we're going to do now is place in all the items that we've built so far. The tower, the fences, the broken piece of fence, the pipework, and the entrance, complete with some new decals to make it look more weathered. And then we're going to extend the pipework out and start putting in the boneyard. This is such an atmospheric little spot in the film. We're going to take some of the apatosaur bones, or I think they're apatosaur bones anyway, size them up as big as they will go, place them around here, and then scatter loads of other bones around here. I've got the whole sauropod skeleton hidden away in there somewhere with just his head and a few vertebrae poking out, which looks really good. And we'll cover it all in some of the arid grassland to match the terrain seen in the film. And then we'll do a bit of terrain work inside the compound to get that kind of muddy look that it has. And then we're going to place some cypress swamp just around the outskirts of the compound. I'll cover up the cypress trees, but this allows us to have mist just drifting in that looks really good. Next up, we're going to finish the operations center. So we've got these projections coming out of the roof and forward over the front door. And then we've got a kind of cage with what looks like an observation tower on the roof of the building. So we're going to build that using just this one metal piece, really. We'll arrange this so it curves upwards from the roof into this pole here. And then we'll duplicate it, spin it around and copy it, and then we can use the circle trick to start building the kind of cage thing that we see here. And once we've got these vertical struts in, we'll do the same thing again to get a series of horizontal bars going around it. And then we'll use a couple of the cage pieces to make the observation tower or whatever it is that sits on top of the building. Again, we'll rotate these into place. Use some simple asphalt pieces to create the base of it, and then we'll add some metal supports in as well. Add some communications aerials and things like that to the roof of it, recolor a few things, and that's that done. We finalised the shape of these projections now, so we're just going to cover them in rust and dirt to start filling it in with the dilapidated look of the rest of the area, and then we're going to start covering it all in foliage. So we're using some of the bushes upside down here to get them to drape over the edges, and then we'll put one the right way up in the centre of it. Gets a really realistic look of some vegetation that's been growing through the concrete and spilling over the sides. We're going to put quite a few of these in, and some ivy as well, and a few other shrubs. All we need to do now is add a helipad onto the roof. These are the decals from the arrival point helipad. We'll get rid of that waterfall and then take a look at our finished operations building. I've made it so that some of the fences are falling down, and I've added loads of the puddle decals as well, just to further sell that abandoned kind of look. Time for the next building. There's a wooden building in between the tower and the operations centre, which is apparently where the workers on site actually lived. This is really dilapidated. It looked like it was pretty much just a shack on a couple of levels when it was built, and obviously time has not been kind to it. So we're just going to build pretty much a box, really, with the wooden walls from the wetlands pack, and then delete bits of it and replace them with some of the broken wood pieces, so it looks like bits of the building are falling down. There's a staircase up to a porch on the first level, and that's kind of repeated on the second level as well. We'll make a roof with these gorgeous rusty corrugated iron pieces, and that's pretty much it. That's the building done. We're going to move on to the final building now. You see the most in the film, the gas station. This is where most of Malcolm's action with the raptors takes place in the film. It was quite tricky to build. It's pretty small, and the front of the building is almost entirely made of glass, which gets smashed during the film. So we need to build an interior for the front part of this. But it got much easier once I discovered the glass roof pieces. I didn't actually realise that we had these in the game. I thought the glass pieces in the game were pretty much all not actually transparent. But these roof pieces are off the grid, so we can use those as windows or whatever we like, really. So they'll do a great job of putting in a window on the left side of the building, and we can use a little bit of them to make the windows above the door as well. Leaning heavily again on the wetlands pack wooden pieces, and then for the interior we'll use some of the powder panels, I think they're called, to create walls. Get some interest in there with some props like the electrical pipes and the little computer from the Badlands set. We'll put a lighting up here. I want this whole park to be completely accessible at night. We're going to see a lot of it at night in the end cinematics. We'll add some supports to this awning here with these metal pieces. We'll put some of these amazing rubbish decals everywhere. These are so good. Our first 3D decals, really useful. And then we'll try and make some petrol pumps. These were pretty tricky because I'm still in the stage of learning what each of the pieces in Jurassic World Evolution 3 is. Don't know them off by heart like in Planet Zoo. So it's just a matter of going through all the pieces, mainly in the props panel, and trying to find anything that might work as a piece of a petrol pump. Cooling systems, some electrical cabinets. One of the air conditioning units has got a pipe coming out the side, which is useful. Finding something that looks like a handle for the pump itself. And I think it looks pretty decent when it's done. We'll just copy it across here. And that means the workers' village is complete. A lot of building, but well worth it, I think, once we see it with the boneyard and the geothermal pipes in front of it. And then inside the compound, I've covered all of it in random piles of rubbish, bits of corrugated iron and boxes, upside down ATVs, just a real mess like it is in the film. And with that complete, we can move on to the field of long grass, where most of the people in the film meet their end. In order to make this, I did loads of experiments on which foliage in the game would deform as the dinosaurs run through them, so we can get that shot of the raptors streaking through the grass. And the best pieces I found that look like long grass and do that are the common reeds. So we're going to take loads of the 1 meter common reeds and loads of the 4 meter common reeds and create a massive field of them, and then we'll surround it with foliage, and this will run down to the workers' village. Once it's done, it looks really good, swaying in the breeze there. And before we see it in action, we're just going to drop in some nests for the compies on the beach and the raptors in the workers' village, so we can get some dinosaurs in and take a look at them. It's just a beautiful day on the beach for our compies, just hopping about without a care in the world. But as we move on into the afternoon, it's hunting time for the raptors. I love that long grass works so well. Really looks like they're shot in the film. We have a Parasaurolophus as well. All these dinosaurs are basically just placed here to do these cinematics, because I don't want them dying of old age before the park's finished. We'll take a look at the worker village at night, which is how we see it in the film. Got raptors stalking around past the petrol station. I would not want to be here at night myself. We've got a lot more to do. The harvester camp, the trailers, the game trail, the Rex nest, and the riverbed that you see towards the beginning of the film with the Stegosaurus. These scenes in The Lost World are our first proper look at the interior of the island, and it immediately shows how different it is to Isla Nublar, mainly because they film most of it in California rather than Hawaii like the first one. The vegetation is very different. There's a lot more conifers and things like that. We're going to put some cedars in here and use them to block out the sun in places to get the kind of dappled light that I want in this scene. The lighting in this game is so good, and the ability to be able to choose where rays of sunshine come through depending on where you've placed your trees is one of my favourite things about it. Once we finish placing the cedars, we're going to add some of the cypress trees with the moss to the sides of the river. They look very much like some of the riverside trees in the film. And when the team encounter the Stegosaurus, they're stood by a load of fallen trees in the middle of the riverbed. It's almost dry, the riverbed, and we'll be simulating that in a second. So we'll just drop some dead trees down here, use a few different types, and then get them so that they're spanning the riverbed. And then we'll drop in some more vegetation as well, just using the elephant grass. And then we're going to use the cypress swamp brush and remove the water at certain points so we get the more dried up riverbed look that you see in the film, and the amazing mist as well, which is the best thing about this cypress swamp brush for me. This is where those sun rays shining down comes in. You can also go in and remove the trees, so we've just got the odd cypress tree here and there where you can just see the branches hanging down rather than actually looking like a cypress swamp. And then we can get the Stegosauruses in. Here's the first one, and there's those light rays I was talking about. They look so good. That's the Stegosaurus riverbed. Let's move on to the main dinosaur area in this episode, which is the game trail. We're just to the left of that riverbed here. You can see it in the bottom right. I'm using that as the water source that Pete Postlethwaite's character talks about when they decide not to camp out on the game trail. And the main feature of the game trail itself is lots of kind of brown, dry grass. So it's going to be a bit of a challenge to do. After lots of experimenting with the terrain paints, I think the arid grassland does the best job, but give us that kind of yellowy brown colour that we want, and you still get tufts of grass as well. And we know there must be some sort of little cliff or rise on the way in there, because there's that really cool shot of the Hummer or whatever it is jumping into the game trail at the start of the sequence, so we'll make sure that we've got one of those. We'll use some more elephant grass and some rocks to make this rise in the terrain here look more natural. And then we'll move on to doing the terrain painting. So we'll just fill this entire area in with the arid grassland, and then we'll use the arid soil to create trails in it where there aren't even any tufts of grass, just to bring it closer to what we see in the film. And we'll run some of this out into adjoining areas as well, so it looks a bit more natural. And we've surrounded it all with the conifer plants, which is the kind of plants that you see in the Lost World. They've got really green grass, which doesn't go well with the much browner grass that we've got everywhere else. So I'm just going to use a really tiny brush to get rid of all the edges so the green doesn't start until the trees do, so you can't really see it. And then finally, to soften off the join between the game trail area and the rest of the island, we'll start placing conifer trees just in from the borders, so the brown grass merges nicely into the surrounding trees. I'm using 4 or 5 different trees here just for variety, and that's the game trail done. We got a lot of dinosaurs to get in here, so let's do it. And here we go. You can just see the RV trailers at the bottom of the screen there. We'll be doing a lot more work on those later. And here's the dinosaurs. We got Mamenchisaurus, Pachycephalosaurus, Parasaurolophus, and Gallimimus in here. Big fan of the Pachycephalosaurus. I don't think I've seen those in Jurassic World Evolution 3 yet. And with all the conifers and the cedars in the background, it's got such a different feel to Isla Nublar. I really like it. We've got a Parasaurolophus having a dust bath here. And this is the view from the riverbed. You see some Gallimimus strolling peacefully along here, but it won't be peaceful for long because we built a ramp and we're going to use it. Driving around really is one of the most fun things in this game. I thought I'd replicate the hunter sequence that you see in the film. We're going to need to have a hell of a lot of dinosaurs in here for the final ecosystem episode because there's quite a few just trapped on this plane here and it doesn't look like that much. Right, that's the game trail done. Let's move on to the high hide. We're going to take these 4 mesh fences, arrange these into the shape that we want to form the bottom of the hide, and then we're going to use these gutter pieces to create the sides. They're not exactly perfect for this, to be honest with you, but this is the closest I could get to what you see in the film. We're a bit short on kind of generic metal pole kind of pieces at the moment, but hopefully we'll get some more of those soon. What we do have that's brilliant though is the fishing nets from the Wetlands DLC. These are perfect for the kind of camouflage netting that sits across the top of it. The pieces aren't quite big enough, so we'll use a few of them and just rotate them so they all meet up nicely with the poles at the side, and then we'll get them to a nice kind of camouflage dark green, and then we'll just use some more of the fence panels to create the base and the roof as well. Again, these aren't quite big enough, but this time we can scale them to the right size on one axis and then just copy them on the other axis. We'll copy them again to get the roof, and then we just need to build a mechanism to attach it to a tree. We'll use one of the straight wire generator pieces to create the first piece of the wire. These are so useful, use these all the time. And then we'll use one of the curved pieces to get us the kind of loop that would be launched over the top of the tree to keep it hanging up there. I noticed some security cameras on it as well. We do have security cameras in the game, but they just don't look like the ones we need here, and they're at a weird angle as well. So we're going to use these lights to stand in for them. They look pretty similar to the real thing. And then we just need a big tree to hang this from, so we're going to use one of the kapok trees, scale it up to its maximum size, and then find a branch which is at a nice height that we can hang the hide on, where we won't have branches and leaves in front of it that are going to spoil the view. I want this loop to actually be over one of the branches, so we'll just fit it in there. And there we go. That's the high hide completed. It is high and you hide. Let's move on to the harvester camp. This is where the InGen guys are taking all the dinosaurs they capture and storing them before taking them back to the mainland, and where they do one of the worst corporate presentations in history as well, which is interrupted by a Triceratops. So I'm placing this not too far from the game trail, on the opposite side to the water source, which kind of ties in with what they're saying in the film. So we're going to clear a big space for it and make sure we've got a little cliff here, which is where Malcolm, etc. look down on it before they go in and start messing with it. And then we're going to fill it with all the tents and the vehicles and the cages and everything else that you see in the film. If you're enjoying this, by the way, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe if you're new to the channel. We're going to move on and start putting together the vehicle with the big communications array on the back of it, just using a pickup truck and a couple of the aerial pieces. And then we'll start putting the tents in. We're going to have lights everywhere that I can see lights in the film, because everything that we see here is going to take place at night, and try and get it as atmospheric as possible. This pile of random stuff from the Wetlands pack is really useful for things like this. We'll just get rid of the steps going up to it and sink it down to ground level. And we can use this and various bits of this all over the camp to clutter it up and get it looking good. And we're also going to build our own campfire. So we're going to take the torch from the Jurassic Park gates, bury that into the ground, and then shrink down some of the smallest wood pieces as small as they'll go and build ourselves a little log fire. Just place them in random positions until they start to sort of get the shape that you'd expect from a campfire, and then we can just scatter this about the camp, and this will really up the atmosphere here. Just looking at this actually makes me really want to sit around a campfire somewhere out in the woods. It's just something so cozy about a fire. And with a few more pieces of wood in it, that's done. We'll copy that around and we'll move on to the main tent where they do the little presentation. We'll use whatever pieces we can find to get that kind of thrown together, doing a presentation on a island full of dinosaurs feel. The little monitor screen from the dig site in the Badlands set is really useful for things like this. We'll add in all the cages where the dinosaurs are stored. We'll scale this one up as big as it goes for the T-Rex. I think that is actually the T-Rex cage from the film there. And finally, we'll bring the forest in to meet everything we built. This is when it really starts to feel like the camp. And there we go, that's the harvester camp built. I think it could do with the dinosaur though. That's better. I think this Triceratops is going to shake things up a bit in the camp. I love that the dinos actually get wet in the rain. That looks really cool. You can even see water running off all the metal and things like that. So we'll bring in one of the Lost World vehicles and see what the Triceratops makes of that. He's not a fan apparently, but that's fine. We're going to move on to the T-Rex nest. This is one of my favourite spots in the film. You can only imagine how disgusting a T-Rex nest would be. If you see birds of prey and things like that, the state of their nests when they're bringing back dead animals all day long for the little chicks to feed on, when you scale that chick up to baby T-Rex size, it is pretty repulsive. I don't think we've really got the tools in the game to quite get it as disgusting as I want, but we're going to do our best. We'll start by putting in some of the rocks where they first observe the baby. We'll get a little depression in the ground where the baby will sit. This is set on the more tropical part of the island, so we use various different terrain paints to get some good ground coverage and some more of the tropical style trees in here. And then we'll start filling that in with bones. We've got a pretty good selection of bones in the statues tab, so we'll start getting some of these in to match the scene in the film. Got a tail, got a rib cage, got various other bones that we're going to scatter around here. We'll have some of them sat on top of the ground and then some of them slightly sunken into it like they've been there for a while. And then we're going to try and get some fresher remains in there. These coral pieces kind of look like bits of meat if we get these in the right position. I saw someone use the whole dinosaur statues to make corpses, which I kind of liked, but you can see the light glinting off the kind of bronze material, so I don't really want to use those here. Maybe we'll get some guts in as well with some of the other corals. And there we go, that's starting to look good. I love the baby T-Rexes in this game. They're so gangly, they're weirdly cute. And while the baby has a little sleep, let's move on to the trailers. These are the trailers. They were originally made by somebody called Altered Perceptions, then they were improved by somebody called Baller D, and then finally the Gaming Beaver improved them further. Once I saw how good these were, there didn't seem any point in building the trailers when people have already done a really good recreation of them. So I decided to use theirs. The only change I'm making, as you can see, is changing the windscreen from that weird kind of super bright blue to a more realistic looking grey. And then we are of course going to chop them up and have them falling off this cliff. In order to do that, we need a completely sheer cliff, so we're going to use the deep water tool with the slope set to maximum to get this cliff completely sheer. We'll join it up with the sea as much as possible, and then we'll get some rocks around the bottom to make it more realistic, and we'll do some terrain painting as well just to make it look a bit more cliff-like. Always use a mixture of the rock and the cliff paints to get these looking realistic, otherwise it just looks way too samey. And once we've done that, we can start getting these trailers as they appear towards the end of the Lost World. So we're going to split this blueprint in half, and then we'll take the second trailer, align it nicely with the first trailer, and then hang it off the end of the cliff. And then we just need to adjust the sort of concertinery style join between them so it looks realistic. Well, as realistic as it looks in the film anyway. It's intersecting with the cliff here, so that's fine. We'll just move the whole thing back in a second. And then one final change is I realized if we change the windscreen so that it actually has one of the interiors on it and get the right interior, it looks like the glass is blown out like it did in the film. We'll add a waterfall in the top, and then we'll use the rubbish decals to add some debris at the bottom. And that is the trailers done. Now all we need is a couple of Tyrannosaurs. Here they come. This was a lot of fun to film, although trying to get two Tyrannosaurs to do what you want them to do at the same time was not easy. It's bad enough with one. And that is everything in the Lost World built. Next, we're going to build everything in Jurassic Park 3. We're going to be building the InGen compound, the river, the amazing aviary, but we're starting with the airstrip. This is where the first real action in Jurassic Park 3 takes place, and it's also the first time that we see the Spinosaurus. And it's a pretty simple build, so it shouldn't take too long. We're going to start with the runway using the flattening foundations to get that nice sand, flat. And we'll be using loads of decals in a minute to make this look really realistic. and then we'll build the few small buildings that you see on the edge of the runway, which are all kind of dilapidated, they've just been abandoned. And as we've done so much of on this island, the pieces from the wetland pack are going to be really useful here. The way I've decided to lay out the Jurassic Park 3 elements on this island is to have them as much as possible separate from the Lost World parts of the build, because you don't see anywhere that you see in the Lost World in Jurassic Park 3 and vice versa. So these are all going to be clustered on the opposite side of the island to where everything we built for the Lost World is. That's the buildings pretty much done. We're going to add in the kind of flagpole. You can see when they land. And then finally, we'll use decals to make everything look realistic. We're going to have big tyre marks from the planes going down the centre of the runway. And then we'll use loads of the different dirt decals just to give everything that old kind of feeling that you see in the film. And there we go, that's the airstrip completed already. And we can move on to a much more complex build, the Aviary. Time to make it look like the film. The scenes here are originally in the Jurassic Park novel. They were cut from the film to save money. They considered having them in the Lost World, which is why you kind of randomly see some pteranodons at the end of the film. And then finally, they actually made it for Jurassic Park 3. It's so good, but it presents us with some pretty serious challenges. The Aviary in the film is absolutely enormous, and unfortunately in the game, there's no way to make the Aviaries any taller than they are. You can only make them wider. So we kind of have a choice. We can either go down the kind of Planet Zoo style modular building route, build an exact replica of the Aviary, but not have any pteranodons in it, because they can only be either in an Aviary or completely free-flying with no interaction with building pieces, or we can use the actual Aviaries and create a kind of scaled-down version of what you see in the film, and that is what we're going to do, because I want to see the pteranodons in here. The first thing to do is get the landscaping around the Aviary to match up with the film. We can't get the terrain any closer to the Aviary than it is, so I'm using the big boulder pieces to make the cliffs around it, and then any remaining terrain will be covered up with sunken trees to get the jungle feel that you see when you look at it from this angle here. We also use a little false perspective trick by taking some of the smallest trees and shrinking them down as small as they go and placing those on the top of the cliffs. Because we kind of know that trees are big. If we have very small trees, it sort of tricks the eye into thinking that they are far away rather than small, which helps to sell the large size of the Aviary that we're going for. And then we're going to move up above the Aviary and prepare the ground for where the observatory building that Grant etc. enter the building through, and the big fence that the Spinosaurus breaks. We'll add that in here. We've got pretty much the exact fence in the game already, which makes that nice and easy. So we're just going to curve it around there, smooth the terrain out, and join these grass panels onto the actual terrain to cover up the part where we can't get terrain in due to the Aviary. And then we're going to move back down to the river and add in the boat. I hadn't actually realised until I started this build that the lagoon boat in the game is based on the boat in Jurassic Park 3, but that is very handy for this build. So we're just going to start working on it and turning it into something that resembles the boat in the film much more closely. So we're going to add engines and lights, we're going to add the cage that they hide in, and then we're going to scale the boat up so it's about the same size you see in the film. We'll add some detailing down the sides with some ropes and various other pieces. There are two engines, I just put one on to begin with and then realised that, so we'll have the other one in a second. Got a big barrel full of oil for the boat's engine here. We'll scale this up as well because this is a seriously hefty barrel. You can see it when Paul Kirby checks the oil levels. Make a couple of corrections to the lights, not happy with the one we've got here, get that other engine in, and that is the boat done. Really happy with how that looks. We've got the little cage that's fallen into the water behind it as well. Let's move on to the building that sits above the Aviary. This is one of the entrances to the Aviary. It's kind of the top entrance, I guess. It's where Grant, etc. run to escape the Spinosaurus, and then from there they go down staircases into the Aviary itself. We're not going to have any way of making those staircases functional, but we're going to have the building up here and the Aviary below it. It's pretty much a circular building, so as usual we're going to build one slice of it and then rotate that around to create the rest of the building. We're going to do it in two groups, just due to the way that the rotation works. We need to rotate the smaller roof in the center differently to the main roof that makes up the rest of the building. Colour's not quite right here, it's a bit too blue, but we'll correct that before the end of the video. I'm a big fan of the grass panels that we've used to create this little area here. It really does match in seamlessly with the actual terrain and gives you a lot more freedom to build in places where the game won't normally let you build. Just got a little bit more rotating to do up here to get this part of the roof finished, and then once we've got that in, we just need to make some very small adjustments to this little roof piece here, make sure that's all perfect, and then we'll create the front door to the building. It's just some slabs of concrete and a door really, and then we'll make sure we position it so it's in exactly the right place just above the Aviary when you look at it from down here. And there we go, that's the entrance building complete. Time for our first dinosaur. Love recreating scenes from the film, so we'll get this as close to Jurassic Park 3 as possible. Here's our Spinosaurus. And there goes our fence. And now we can move on to building the inside of the aviary. There is a lot going on the interior of the aviary, and we're going to start with something that looks like it starts on the interior and then moves on to the exterior, which is some kind of massive gantry, which is probably a walkway. They don't really go into it in the film, you just see it in the long shots from the river, but it appears to extend from somewhere around the roof of the aviary out onto the cliffs next to it. So we're just going to make one piece and then clone that to create the gantry. We'll join it up with the cliffs, and then there's some sort of support wires. We'll build those using a metal column. I think it's one of the light supports or a lamppost or something like that. And then some of the wire generator pieces, which are so useful. We'll scale and rotate these until they join up with the aviary in the way that we want them to. And we'll use a similar piece to create the door that Grant and the rest of the group exit the aviary through. And then we'll start working on all the gantries and support columns and everything else inside the aviary that they're walking down when they get attacked by the pteranodons. These aviary perches are going to be really important for this build, because one of the key things that I want is that the pteranodons are able to actually sit in the gantries that go throughout the aviary like they do in the film. So we need to incorporate the aviary perches into the build so that the pteranodons can do that, but I want to incorporate them in such a way that you can't see that they're aviary perches. I want them to be a completely seamless part of the gantry. So once we've built a nice rusty gantry piece that gives the kind of birdcage effect that you see in the film, we're going to create various different pathways and then have the aviary perches look like support struts for them. They're recolorable, which is useful, so we can get them to the same kind of rusty shade as the gantries, and this will enable the pteranodons to actually land here. One of the key things in these scenes for me, as well as all the rusty, broken walkways like this, is the fog that fills the canyon that the aviary sits in, and we're going to replicate that by adding in a lot of the cypress swamp biome to the floor. If we add in the cypress biome and then use the bulldoze tool just to remove the individual trees, you can still get the fog, which is going to be really useful for setting the atmosphere in this build. Before we do that, we'll use some of the stair pieces and fences as well to join everything up nicely, and we can move on and start building the pillars of rock where they nest. These are nice and easy to build. We're just going to randomly rotate a load of rocks on top of each other and then scale them so they're a bit bigger at the bottom than they are at the top. Get us a nice pillar, and then we'll just have 4 of these positioned here, roughly like they are in the film, although obviously we're working on a much smaller scale here. And then once we've got them in the right position, we're going to take some of the bone statues and add these to the top. I'd love to have a nest over here, but you can only have nests on terrain, and you need a lot of terrain to put the nests on. But I think they look pretty good with the sunlight and the mist. And that is the final stage of the aviary done. It's time to get some pteranodons in and take a look at it. Despite the smaller size, I think this really looks like the scene in the film, and the pteranodons look amazing in here, flying through the fog. I position the cliff so that the sun comes through at just the right angle to illuminate it here, and with the pteranodons actually able to land on the middle of the gantry like they do in the film. Really happy with that. Let me know in the comments what you think of the aviary, because this was definitely the hardest thing to build. I'd love to know your thoughts on it. Let's move on to the next stage in Jurassic Park 3, which is the river. This is just a very brief scene in the film after the aviary, before the Spinosaurus attack, where they go past a section of the island full of Brachiosaurs and Ankylosaurs and various other dinosaurs. So I wanted to make sure that it was in here. We don't need to spend too much time on it, just flattening out a piece of land, getting the quite high bank that you can see as they go past it, and then we'll temporarily fill it with some dinosaurs, and here it is. And with the river done, there's just one more place to build, right here below the aviary, the Embryonics Administration. In Jurassic Park 3, this set was built on top of the worker village set from The Lost World, and then parts of it were removed, parts of it were rebuilt, and parts of it were replaced digitally. And we're going to do something similar. We can actually use the base of the main building in the workers' village to create the Embryonics Administration building. We'll get rid of all the stuff that we don't need and then start adding in all the new stuff. It is going to have a name change, unfortunately, because the smallest font shrunk down to the smallest size is still too big to fit the words Embryonics Administration on the sign. So we're going to call it the Embryonics Lab. And we're even going to do a little bit of an interior on this building. Firstly, though, we're going to build the new roof. So we'll get rid of some of the projections that featured on the worker village building that don't feature on this, and then we'll start using these curved canvas pieces to make the dilapidated roof that this building has. We'll detail it using some of the girder pieces, both straight and curved in the various different places that you see them in the film. This complex is where the raptors are encountered in Jurassic Park 3, so we'll be adding the Jurassic Park 3 skinned raptors here, and when we turn this into an ecosystem, we're actually going to have 2 groups of raptors on the island. The Jurassic Park 3 ones here, and the Lost World ones over by the worker village and the long grass. This building's starting to come together, so let's start turning it into the overgrown kind of wilderness look that it has in the film. There's a big InGen sign in the middle of the area, so we'll use the sign that we created for the worker village to make that. Surround that with loads of different plants and ferns, and then we'll start bringing in some of the clutter from that area as well. And then we'll move on to the interior. So we're going to build the counter with the InGen sign behind it that has the phone and various other things on it. We're going to build most of this from this planter. So we've just recolored it, and then we're going to copy it and resize it underneath itself to get the counter, a few other pieces to detail it. We'll fill the entire building with rubbish, and later on we'll add some plants in here as well. And then we'll move on to the buildings that sit behind the Embryonics Administration. There's a big circular building with a really unique look. You don't really get a close look at it. I'm pretty sure this was just a digital building that they added in the background. I don't think it's part of the actual set. From what you can see in the film, it appears to be made out of rusted metal planks in a really interesting circular shape that gets higher as it goes round. So we'll create that here using these wood planks, which are about the closest we could get. And then we'll use colouring and some of the rust decals to make them look more like metal. I think once we've got the colour right, and once we add the rust decals to the top and dirt and things like that, we can get a pretty decent approximation of a metal building here. There's some windows as well, which we can create pretty easily just by shifting the position of some of the planks. And there we go, that looks pretty good, sat behind the main building there. There's another building next to it, so we'll get on with that. This is a pretty simple concrete construction. We'll just make it with some of the concrete pieces and some of the trim pieces. It's got a massive chimney on it, and after extensive searching, this gas tank is probably actually the closest to that we can use once we've recolored it. And then finally, we're going to turn this into an actual functioning park with an arrival point, hatchery, and response facility, which we're going to hide with buildings resembling what you can see in the aerial shot of this area when the characters first encounter it. These buildings are all but invisible unless you happen to be flying the camera directly over where they are. You can't really see them behind the main Embryonics Administration building, but we need infrastructure in this park, and I wanted to have somewhere permanent to keep them. So when you guys download it, you can add your own dinosaurs or do whatever you like with it. I've turned collision off so the infrastructure will work as it should do, and that is the Embryonics Administration area completed. Let's take a look at it. The main building sits in a pool of water, just like the building at the workers' village, and as we approach it through the jungle, I really like the dilapidated look. I've added some more of the cypress swamp so we get a bit of fog in here. Now if you look closely, we might just see some of the Jurassic Park 3 raptors running past. I love the shot in the film where the camera just lingers behind the characters and an out of focus raptor just runs past. So I thought we'd recreate that. And that is the majority of the building work for The Lost World completed. You can see everything we've built on the island here. Next, we're going to be attempting to turn this into a functioning ecosystem, or that's the plan anyway, because we're not going to do it in a sensible fashion, selecting areas of the island that would be good for different groups of dinosaurs, placing them together there. We're going to be attempting to exactly recreate where the dinosaurs are on this island in The Lost World and Jurassic Park 3, and seeing what happens. This is the High Hide, and just behind it, the game trail, and this is where we're going to begin preparing this island for our dinosaurs. One of the key things that I want to achieve here is to try and keep the island looking as much as possible like it does here, rather than just immediately filling every space with all the different types of food that the dinosaurs need. We're going to try and change it as little as possible and see if we can get the dinosaurs to survive here. We have so many dinosaurs to add to our island, and we're going to be starting in this area with 12 Parasaurolophus, 10 Gallimimus, 9 Pachycephalosaurus, 3 Triceratops, 2 Mamenchisaurus, and later on 13 Compsognathus. So I'm trying to add in tiny amounts of the food that those particular dinosaurs need without ruining the look of the place. On the other side of the island is this new area, the big grassland that you see from the plane at the start of Jurassic Park 3. And here, as well as even more Triceratops, Parasaurolophus, and Pachycephalosaurus, we're going to have a massive herd of Corythosaurus, 4 Stegosaurus, and 3 Brachiosaurs. In order to determine how many dinosaurs to have, I've combined extensive research on how many dinosaurs there were here in the time of the films, with a study on the predator-prey ratio in the Cretaceous period, which we'll discuss in a minute. For now, we're at the deep river near the Aviary, where we'll be adding yet more herbivores, including our first Ankylosaurus, and this will also be the home of one of the predator populations for Ceratosaurus. It's not just food that we need to place down, we need to make sure that we have appropriate nests for each dinosaur as well, so that hopefully they can start breeding. And with the deep river done, we can move on to the shallow river where we'll have a family group of Stegosaurus. This river flows past the game trail, then the Embryonics Administration, then the large area of grassland that we saw. It then forms a waterfall just next to the Aviary before flowing down into the deep river and then out to the sea. I've tried to make a river system throughout the island that actually works like a real river system would, so the dinosaurs have lots of water sources. Here's the Aviary. We're going to have 4 Pteranodon in here and then 6 flying free around the island to match up with what you see in the Lost World and Jurassic Park 3. We will need to put a fish feeder in here so the Pteranodons that stay in the Aviary survive, to match how they were fishing in the river that runs through the Aviary in Jurassic Park 3. For the free flying Pteranodons, we need to do something a bit sneaky, so we're going to put an Aviary down on a cliff top, put some nests in here, and then we can delete the Aviary and the game will leave the nests there and they will be accessible for the Pteranodons. And then we'll just do some terrain painting to make this look more like a cliff top. And then we can move on to the beach. This is where one of our 4 populations of compies will live. There'll be small nests scattered all over the island for these guys. And then it's the airstrip. This is where Spinosaurus will begin. They eat fish from deep water, so we're going to put in a big pool next to the airstrip, which will then have a waterfall leading down into the river system. Hopefully this will provide enough food for her. According to everything I saw, there was only ever one Spinosaurus on the island, so this is the one dinosaur that definitely won't be breeding, but I'm thinking she's just going to cause some absolute mayhem while she's in here. As for the rest of the island, the worker village will be home to 11 Parasaurolophus and 13 compies, with the long grass just next to it home to a pack of 10 raptors. The Rex nest will contain, to begin with, 2 Tyrannosaurs called Buck and Doe, and finally the Embryonics lab will contain another pack of 6 raptors and 2 more Ankylosaurus. That's all the dinosaurs that we're having. It's time to start creating them. I've placed several temporary hatcheries around the island. We're going to begin with the herbivores, and we're basically going to pause the game, get all the herbivores ready, using every bay across 3 or 4 hatcheries. We're starting with the herbivores in order to make sure we get all of them out there and hopefully somewhat comfortable before we start introducing the carnivores into the equation. And then we'll unpause the game, and hopefully my PC doesn't explode. Looking good, and we can start getting enormous amounts of dinosaurs onto the island. Here come the Parasaurolophus. They're going to be one of the most important herbivores on this island because there's going to be a lot of them. So let's talk about how many of each different dinosaur we're going to have. I used Jurassic Legacy to research how many of these dinosaurs were on the island at the time of the Lost World and or Jurassic Park 3. And then according to a study I found on the predator-prey ratio in the Cretaceous period, which if you're not aware of that is how many prey animals you need to sustain a population of predators. According to their research, you needed 100 herbivores for every 4 T-Rexes. So as well as our 2 Rexes, if we count each group of carnivores, the raptors and the Ceratosaurus, and the Spinosaurus as 1 Rex, then we have 6 Rexes, and we need 150 herbivores on the island. And luckily I found if we just divide the number of the groups of herbivores in half, we will end up with just over 150 herbivores altogether, which works very nicely. So that's how many we're having. However, straight away we're encountering our first problem. If we look at our Mamentosaurus here, they are not happy at all. They have nowhere near the amount of food that they need, despite all the appropriate food I've added around the margins of this area. Because like I said at the start, I don't want to ruin the look of the island by covering it in all the food plants. And as this ecosystem progresses, what I've discovered is that the amount of food that the dinosaurs require to be comfortable is very different from the amount of food they actually require to live. By the time the herbivores are spread across almost the entire island, most of them are still not at full comfort, yet in the entire time that this ecosystem exists, not a single herbivore died from starvation, so they must by definition have enough food. The game just seems to want you to put more in than they need. That is going to have big ramifications for the amount of successful breeding we can have on this island, but that's fine, because the whole point of this is not to create the perfect ecosystem, but to see if we can get the ecosystem that you see in the Lost World to function. We're on to the second load of herbivores here. 3 hatcheries with all the upgrades installed was not enough to get all our herbivores done. We're going to be introducing the Stegosaurus, Corythosaurus, and many others over to the new grassland area, the deep river, the worker village, and the long grass. I cannot wait to get all these dinosaurs in. I've been playing Jurassic World Evolution since the first game, and we've never had the ability to make a proper ecosystem before, so it's going to be so interesting to see what happens. You can see it's absolute carnage here, trying to get all the dinosaurs in. Probably should have used some more landing pads. And as the island starts to fill up, you can see the dinosaurs are starting to find the river systems and base their habitats around there. The Brachiosaurs are already doing nicely in this valley. And that is all the herbivores done. Let's move over to the Aviary and start introducing the Pteranodons. This is probably my favourite part of the park, and we're going to start here with 4 of the Jurassic Park 3 Pteranodons. Here they are. They'll be living in the Aviary, And then on the outside, we'll have the Lost World Pteranodons. Here's the first one here. They'll be free flying, and there's just something about having animals actually flying above the island that we've created that just looks so amazing. They just bring another dimension to it. I love it. Our Isla Sorna is really starting to come together now, and with our flying reptiles in, now we can move on to the carnivores. First up is the Spinosaurus. She seems pretty shy at first, but that is quite an entrance. She immediately makes her way down to the deep lake that we made for her at the start. We've got Buck and Doe, our T-Rexes, starting off at the T-Rex nest, and then 4 Ceratosaurus into the deep water near the Aviary. Next up, down by the workers' village, are our Lost World Velociraptors. And on the other side of the mountain in the middle of the island, the Jurassic Park 3 raptors are coming in. This pack will take up residence around the Embryonics Administration, like in the film, although who knows where they'll end up. And then finally, our little compies. These will be scattered all over the island. The first group will take up residence here on the beach, probably the most peaceful place on the island, although I worry about them finding anything to eat here. And now our ecosystem is in place. There are dinosaurs covering the whole island. Who will thrive? Who will survive? Let's find out. Already I am in love with scenes like this from just above the Aviary with the Corythosaurus walking through the background down the river. The herbivores are really starting to establish themselves now. You can see a Parasaurolophus in the background now. But we have some new arrivals on the island. The predators are starting to find out where the prey is. Let the carnage begin. We have our first interaction. Oof, and the first thing I'm noticing is that the Stegosaurus really pack a punch. That Ceratosaurus will probably not be trying that again. Aside from it being an interesting thing to attempt, one of the main reasons that I've placed all the dinosaurs where they are in the films is so we can see things like this with the Ankylosaurus and the Parasaurolophus by the river near the Aviary, the raptors walking through the ruined Embryonics Administration. It's so evocative of the films, and it's a lot of fun to watch. If we take an overview of the whole island now, you can just see some Parasaurolophus walking through the river down there, and it really starts to feel like the Lost World. Something important has happened as well. We have our first juvenile dinosaurs. The Gallimimus are the first to breed, and they have a lot of babies, so I think that's going to stand them in good stead for their survival in this ecosystem. Sadly, on the other side of the park, we have our first extinction. The Mamenchisaurus have already been hunted down by the T-Rex. This is the last survivor, and he has about 2 seconds of life left. There's another sauropod doing much better though, the Brachiosaur. They have also bred. They're so powerful. For the moment, they seem to be impervious to all the predators on the island. And speaking of predators, the raptors predictably are doing very well. They are happily eating their way through the Parasaurolophus throughout the island, and the 2 packs are quickly spreading out from the workers' village and the Embryonics Administration where they started. They've yet to breed though, and that brings us on to a major problem with our ecosystem. The presence of so many major carnivores on this island, our T-Rex for example. If we take a look at Doe here, you can see that they have a cohabitation issue due to the fact that they hate velociraptors, and velociraptors hate the T-Rex. And this means that despite the fact that they are both easily finding food and have huge areas to roam in, neither of them are breeding. In fact, the Rexes seem to be more interested in fighting with each other than partaking in any romantic activities. So the success of each group of predators is going to come down to who lasts the longest. If our Rexes can outlive the Raptors, then the Rexes will start to breed. They could become the champions of this island, or maybe the Raptors will do it. Meanwhile, we have another breeding success, the free-roaming Pteranodons. They've had a little bit of help, because believe it or not, I didn't realize the flying reptiles could hunt in this game. I have never done a big ecosystem build like this before. So I gave them a little fish feeder, and then I saw this happening. This is one of the coolest things I've ever seen in this game, a Pteranodon hunt. I'd written them off as piscivores, as the game tells you that they are, but turns out, as I'm sure most of you already know, that they can hunt land animals very nicely. This Gallimimus is finding that out at the moment. Although being able to fly, I kind of feel like the Pteranodons are at a bit of an advantage over all the other animals in the game, as they essentially face no predation themselves here. And there's another dinosaur that is definitely not having an easy time of it, the Compsognathus. In real life, the Compsognathus ate small reptiles, lizards and things like that. In the game, they are scavengers, and although we've got quite a lot of predators on this island, they are struggling to find enough to scavenge. Their numbers are depleting, although nothing goes to waste on Isla Sorna. This raptor is very happy with his little compy snack, but somebody who isn't happy is the Spinosaurus. For some reason, despite having a large, deep lake full of fish, which she was very happy in for the first few months, she decided to wander in the opposite direction down towards the river, and then on her way back starved to death within sight of the lake. There's another struggling dinosaur here, the Triceratops. This is the last Triceratops on the island. Most of them, like this one, have fallen foul of the T-Rex. They were another animal that didn't breed. It is a cutthroat world here on Isla Sorna, with all the dinosaurs being placed in their movie-accurate positions rather than positions that make sense from an ecological perspective. There are only a handful of dinosaurs breeding, and the species are dropping like flies. This was not what I was expecting though. Buck has been taken down by one of the Stegosaurus. I said they were powerful, and it looks like I was right. We are down to just one Tyrannosaur left on the island, and that means the quest for who will reign as the top predator here is now a straight fight between the Velociraptors and the Ceratosaurus. The Raptors are still doing pretty well, they're still covering the whole island, but we're down to just one Ceratosaurus. This one got lost out on the coast and starved to death, and this one... Okay, we have no Ceratosaurus. It's down to Doe and the Velociraptors, who will last the longest. Across the island, the Brachiosaurs are still doing really well, successfully breeding, and I haven't seen a single one lost to predation yet. And whilst the numbers of the other herbivores are thinning out, there's still a lot of them left on the island, little pockets here and there. At the Embryonics Administration Centre, we've got Corythosaurus, Gallimimus, Pachycephalosaurus, and a few Parasaurolophus still hanging on. And if we continue to have enough herbivores for the predators to eat, then whoever can hang on longest out of Doe and the Velociraptors will become the top predators on the island. The Ankylosaurus may have something to say about that though. They're proving just as powerful as the Stegosaurus, and suddenly the Velociraptors are extinct. The Ankylosaurus did for 3 of them, and a pair of Stegosaurs did for these 4. I'm actually surprised the enormous effect the Stegosaurus has had on the ecosystem here, and that leaves Doe, at least temporarily, as the queen of Isla Sorna. Due to the breeding issues, when she dies, whether that's from old age or from being taken out, the only remaining predators on the island will be the Pteranodons, although with the help they've had from their fish feeder, I don't think they can be counted. And that is Isla Sorna as a movie-accurate ecosystem. It did not turn out the way I expected, but with just one land predator left, a whole load of herbivores, and 4 of those herbivores happily breeding, it looks like Isla Sorna belongs to them. This entire island is now on the workshop. Check the description for the download code, and maybe you can make your own more successful ecosystems with some clever placement of the dinosaurs. Thanks for watching. Bye.